Welcome back to yet another episode of County Talk. As you know, and if you've been following along with us, this is where we talk about the nitty-gritty issues that involve county government, Montrose County specifically. And we are going to talk to our Montrose County Treasurer today, Rosemary Murphy. I'm Sue Hansen. I'm one of your 3 elected county commissioners. And there's always a lot of confusion between finance with the county and who does what. And, you know, we have a finance department, we have a treasurer's office. And so what we want to do is clarify for you what the difference is between what the county treasurer does. So, Rosemary, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
We're glad to...
It's a perfect time because we are working on preparing the tax notices to be mailed by the end of this month, by the end of January.
Everybody excited about that? Tax notices are coming out, so that's the fun part of your job, right?
Right.
So, let's talk a little bit about your background and how you found your way to Montrose County as our treasurer. And this is your... Tell me how many terms?
This is my 18th year.
18th year
as treasurer.
So we have someone with a deep knowledge of what a treasurer does. You've proven year after year how good a job you do, and obviously you keep getting reelected. So you have the confidence of the voters too. So tell us a little bit how you got into it.
Well, I grew up in Virginia, and before I left there, I worked for 14 years at a fulfillment company, and basically did a lot of the things like collecting taxes. I was the director of fulfillment, and that included receiving all of the orders, taking the money, making the bank deposits, basically the same thing as we do with collecting taxes. When I came to Montrose, I secured a position at one of the local financial institutions, and the manager at that time was Carla Logan.
Oh.
So I worked there in that institution for about 10 years. And so in 1999, Carla called me one morning at work and said, "Would you like to change jobs?" And so I thought about it about 30 minutes, and I called her back, and I said, "Sure, tell me about it." So,
a whole 30 minutes went into that decision?
Well, yeah, a whole 30 minutes, because at the bank you worked staggered shifts, and you had to work on Saturdays.
Uh-huh.
And then my mother was in the care center here, and I needed to have more flexibility of being there with her in the mornings and lunch and so that was a big factor in making that change. And so she had someone leave the office abruptly, and it was March, busy time for our office. So
why is that a busy time for our office? Your office?
February 28th is when the second half taxes are due. Mm-hmm. And so in March we are still receiving those payments, and then preparing for the next full payment that comes in April 30th.
So you've been, to say your experience at this job would be a vast understatement. You've been doing it a long time. How important is the treasurer, or an elected position like a treasurer? How important is that to a county?
Well, of course, that's directed by the statutes that we have elected officials to be responsible for different facets of the county. The main thing that any elected official needs to know, such as the treasurer, the assessor, the clerk, we need experience before we actually apply for those positions with our citizens to vote for us. Mm-hmm. Because our jobs are very detailed. Everything we do is run by the statutes,
right,
which is created from the legislature.
And the statutes are lots and lots of rules. So,
yes, and the laws.
The law.
Yeah, and we have to follow the law.
Right. Yeah. So I think it is important, because as people think about elected officials, sometimes people don't consider the vast knowledge that at least 3 of the elected positions need to have, and you don't just want anybody in those positions. So I know that since you've been at it for so long, I know there's got to be some rewarding experiences. Can you share something that really stood out to you as being as rewarding as our county treasurer?
Well, my most rewarding experience was being elected, and then being able to serve the citizens of this county. I take that really close to heart, and I'm very proud of being able to do that. Also, being the treasurer, I was able to secure a certificate of the Colorado County Treasurer through Mesa State University, which is also very important to me. And then right now, a rewarding thing is that our office is going to get to move back into the renovated courthouse in the very same place we've always been.
So stay tuned for that.
Yes.
So in maybe September, you'll be back into the old courthouse,
Yeah.
which will be kind of a new courthouse. So yeah, that'll be great. And you'll have that big the vault.
Yes.
So everything will be back as it should be.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, just exactly like it was.
Good.
Correct.
So we have a finance department that handles things for the county, and we have a county treasurer. So let's make sure people understand the difference.
Okay. The county treasurer is charged by the statutes of collecting all funds coming into the county or going out of the county.
No matter what they are.
No matter what they are.
Okay.
We work in real time, well, I say like today, and we handle all the cash. We create all the bank accounts. We sign on all the bank accounts, and we record all the funds, and we receipt all of those funds, and we balance all the bank statements to make sure all of that is correct. Now, what finance does, they distribute those county funds under the direction of you and
Right.
the BOCC. They don't just arbitrarily say, well, we're going to put this amount of money and we're going to spend this amount of money out of the general fund. It might be the airport fund that it should be spent
Right.
from. And all of that has to be approved.
Sure, which
by
is
you.
what we do a lot of at our regular meetings is approve expenditures.
Right.
Right. So it's not just taxes that are come to your office. So other forms of money that comes into your office.
Anything that gets the sales tax. The sales tax gets sent to us through the bank electronically. We have to receipt that in. Any payments from the state for the Department of Health and Human Services, any grants for the airport, any payments for the airport from the airlines, even for the vendors that go online and pick up people, like Uber or anyone.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so I think it's important that people know that there's a separation, and why is that important? So we have the money comes into you, and then it gets transferred as it's needed into the county funds. Why is that important?
The separation of duties? Well, the separation of duties means that the same person isn't doing that everything, and that is accountability. And then every year, the county's audited. Our office is part of that audited. So they determine that we are fulfilling our obligation of separation of duties. Because, I mean, just pretend in my office, for one, we have separation of duties in our little staff. If I have to create a check for a refund over a tax payment, or I can't sign that check. I have to have my chief deputy sign it. She has to make sure that it's correct, and then she seals it and puts it in the envelope and mails it. It never goes back to the person who wrote the check.
Which is what you want. You want separate checks and balances so that we know that all the time that we are being fiscally responsible and according to the law.
According to the law.
Yeah, it is really critical.
Yeah.
So, how do you, as a treasurer, decide what you should invest in or not? Because when we get our report, there's a lot of funds and things like that and investments. Tell me how you do that. How do you decide?
Okay. Well, number one, there again, it's all directed by the statutes. So the statutes tells the treasurer, you are responsible for all the banking accounts. All the bank accounts are opened in the name of the treasurer, and the treasurer signs on those. And in our county, the chief deputy also signs on those accounts. And when we invest in something other than local banks or our CDs, local CDs, we can invest for bonds, but that also is directed by the statute. The bonds that we invest in have to be guideline, just as the statute says. They have to be AAA bonds. So everything we do is directed by the statutes again. And the statutes tells us the three things you must follow is that you have to make sure that all the funds you're responsible for are safe. and then they're accessible. They have to be liquid money.
So let
And-
me just interrupt you for a second. So let's just say you got a hot tip on a great investment, and you could really earn a lot of money for the county. Could you change the strategy?
No,
Okay, because of the statute.
because of the statute.
The law tells you how and what you can invest in.
Exactly.
Okay. So I think that's important because, I think we've had some questions about, well, why are you investing in this over this? And what if we're not getting market rate or we're not making up enough as much money? Safety is important for the county. We have a lot of obligations that we have made for the future, and so we have to make sure the funds are there. So is that part and parcel of why that is?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And I definitely don't want to lose any of the county's money.
Right. No, I know. That's why it's important to consider, back to your original point about elected officials, who you nominate or who you elect to these positions is so critical.
Yes.
So one of the big things for the county is transparency. We talk about it a lot with our finance department. How do you ensure financial, transparency and accountability?
Okay. I'm going to refer to the statutes again.
Good. I want people to know that it's driven by the law.
Everything is driven by the law.
Good.
Exactly. So the statute says that the treasurer's books are open at any time for the public to view. So, anytime any citizen wanted to come in and say, Rosemary, show me your books. It's the law.
You think that you're going to have a whole bunch of people lined up now to come look at your books?
Probably not. They're more than welcome to do that.
But that's good to know. I don't think I even knew that.
Yeah.
That I could just, before I was a commissioner, I could just come in and ask, and you could educate me.
Yes, definitely. And that should happen. So yeah.
So what is your priority as a county treasurer?
Well, in our office, we're charged with 3 different responsibilities, and they're all of them are our priority, and they have to be, again, according to the law.
Mm-hmm.
We're the tax collector, so we receive tax money, property tax money, and the law says you have to distribute that to all the taxing jurisdictions by the 10th of the following month, because we don't only just collect county taxes that stays with the county. We collect taxes for about 42 other special districts.
So when people get there, and I think this is important to know, so I get my tax, which you're about to send out, and it will list a number of the entities. So what are just some of the more well-known entities that you collect tax from?
Well, all the schools, and most of the schools also have a bond that has been passed to either build schools or upgrade. So that's 2 sections right there that's going to show in your statement. You'll see the school and the bond. You'll see water districts, fire districts, cemetery districts. Yeah. So,
yeah, it is startling when you look down through the list, and I think the assessor just published that list just recently about what all the taxing districts are.
Right.
So there is a misunderstanding where people, when they get their tax bill and whatever the amount is, it's $1,000, let's say, they think that the county gets all of that money. You take it in, but this is what you're talking about, is that you have to distribute that by the 10th of every single month.
Of the following month.
Because those entities are relying on those disbursements so that they can run their operations as well.
Exactly. And so you were talking about the portion of the money that the county receives. The county receives about 22% of the funds. The school district about 30%, and the rest of the funds, all of the authorities receive the rest of it.
Yeah, and some of them have a little bit, and some have more. The school district is the largest one, though,
Right.
of all the taxing districts. But
And we have about $62 million to collect this year.
okay, in taxes.
Yeah,
All right, that sounds like a lot.
it is a lot.
Is that a record for you in your career here?
This is, yes.
And that has to do with what?
It has to do with the valuations of the property.
So as we all know, our taxes did go up this year, and so those of you who are homeowners, your home was worth more. It was assessed at a higher rate, and so that caused for more money to come into the county.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure some people may not be aware that the taxing jurisdiction sets their mill levy, as well as the county. The BOCC, sets the mill levy. The assessor creates the value of the property, and the treasurer collects the funds. Yeah, so.
It's for someone who is not exposed to government or has not taken civics class, it can be a pretty complicated. I mean, we're making it simple, but it is a complicated and well run process. I mean, and it's all by statute. So none of us get to be willy-nilly about the decisions. I think it's important for people to know that how much is how seriously you take your job. And I appreciate that about you, is that this is, and I can't think of a better person to be a treasurer, because you're calm most of the time.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. But you also instill a confidence that you're taking good care of the county funds, and those for actually all the entities that you're taking care of. So what keeps you up at night, or what keeps you up? What do you worry about in your job?
I don't know that I worry about my job, but being an elected official, a county treasurer, it's a 24-hour job. It's not 8 to 5, mm-hmm. because you're always thinking, well, could we do that different? Could we, or did we do that correctly? You know, we always want to make sure that everything is correct, and so you're always thinking of that at all times.
Yeah, it is really pretty monumental task to be an elected official, because you have responsibility for all the financial end of it, not necessarily the expenditures, but taking in the money. So yeah, I think it's great to have elected officials that we do have, that take it seriously and think that we have to be fiscally conservative, that we're not just wasting money. Everything has a reason. The budgets are all set in place. I mean, it's a well-orchestrated process.
Correct.
And it's not, and again, we keep going back to the statutes, which we've said probably 20 times already. It's back to the statute. Mm-hmm. So nothing keeps you up at night, because except for how to improve your delivery of services, mm-hmm. or a process.
Correct.
Perhaps. Okay, good. Well, so if you were, if someone were running for office or came to you and said, Rosemary, are you gonna run again? I'd be interested. What advice would you give them?
Well, I would advise them, you really need to be working in our office, because you need to know what goes on. There's so much. Mm-hmm. Because we don't only collect the taxes, we're the bank for the county, so we have to manage all the bank accounts. Just for instance, when we in the morning, every morning when we arrive at work, we go online to our bank, and we have 8 transaction accounts, which money flows in and out daily. Mm-hmm. We open every one of those accounts, and if there has been a transaction in it, we print that statement. We receipt those funds in and balance that account every day. Every day. The other part is being the public trustee for Montrose County, which includes processing foreclosures, doing releases of deeds of trust. Mm-hmm. And like I say, those 2 positions also are directed by the statutes.
Right.
You have timelines you have to meet on everything that we do.
Right.
So
yeah, again, there's not a lot of it. You can't bring a lot of creativity to that job, to tell you the truth, right?
No.
So,
in any education that you've had, you really need the experience.
So it really is. You want someone to be pretty well acquainted with what the county treasurer does. You wouldn't just want someone off the street say, "Oh yeah, I can count money. I'm good at finance." You really need someone has had the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the same with a lot of elected offices. People misunderstand how complicated it is and how by law we are structured. Every decision that the BOCC makes has some statute connected to it, and what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. But let's shift a little bit from your office and go to the public trustee and talk a little bit about foreclosures. And I mean, we've had tax sales. Explain that whole process, kind of from the beginning to how it turns out in October when you do those sales.
Okay. Now, that's foreclosures are different than tax sales. Okay. So the tax sale comes from if someone becomes delinquent on their taxes and they're not able to pay them. The statute says that you have to have a tax lien sale so that you can collect those funds to distribute to the taxing jurisdictions. The tax lien sale we still have ours in person. Several years ago, Mesa County was one of the first ones that went to online tax sales.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And our investors asked me, please don't do that, because our investors that have supported the counties all the time in the past were really left out of the online sales.
Mm-hmm.
So I promised them, as long as I was the county treasurer, we would continue to have in-person
Yeah,
sales.
there's something about having your neighbor and seeing your people that you know at the tax lien sale.
Yeah, and we have people that come from out of state. That's part of their retirement. They do that.
Because you can earn a percentage of interest on. So let me just make that simple for people, because I do think that's important. If someone forecloses or is delinquent on their taxes, then you have an obligation to make sure all the taxing entities get their money.
Correct.
So a private citizen can come in, register, and can pay those taxes for somebody else, receive an interest payment on that investment, and then you receive the money, just like the treasurer's supposed to, and then you're able to distribute it to the additional taxing entities that need that.
Correct.
So it's in order to keep the money flowing to some degree. It's not because we like to do that. It's because that's part of the obligation statutorily.
Yes,
which
correct.
again, that's like 50 times we've mentioned
Yeah.
that. So we have that always in October.
We always have it the last Thursday in October in our county.
Mm-hmm.
And investors can come. They just have to be able to pay for their liens at the time while they're in our sale.
Right.
When the sale is completed. We usually have between 80 and 100 investors that will come, and they register. We assign them what we call a bidder number, but we do the round robin bid, where you sit in the chair of the number that we gave you, and we pick a number, and we are going to read off the first property, and you're offered that. So it's not a bidding process.
Yeah, you
like
can't just
a
pick a
verbal
piece of
bid.
property and say, I want to come bid on something,
No,
right? Yeah.
no, you can't select that
Right,
way.
right.
So when you do come to the sale and you do purchase a lien, you do have to hold that lien for 3 years before you could apply for a treasurer's deed to that. And that process has changed now. So we have to have a treasurer's deed auction similar to a foreclosure on that part.
Interesting.
So,
but
that's
by and large, don't people pay they pay their taxes? We've participated in it before, but when I became a county commissioner, I was prohibited by statute.
That's right.
To not participate. But people do pay their taxes.
Generally, yeah. We have very few properties that ever get to the part of the public auction now. Yeah.
Which is good. I mean, I think that, the point is not to sell property to other people at a low rate. It's to receive the money and it gives people time to remedy their delinquency.
Yeah. Well, people have hardships,
Sure.
Their health, somebody
All kinds
passes
of
away.
reasons,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we have people that come in our office and we counsel them, don't put your money on a credit. Don't put your taxes on a credit card. It's much better just to let it go to lien. It doesn't get reported to your credit. We don't report those, and you have 3 years to catch them up. So it's not the worst thing. It's really better for you to let that happen.
That's good to talk a little bit about your interaction with the taxpayers, because you're talking about people. I mean, when they come in, they pay their taxes. It's not an insignificant amount. For all of us, and what's your philosophy on interacting with our residents?
Well, we try to explain to them, exactly. People say, "Well, how come my taxes are so high?" And of course, this the last 2 years, and we explain the situation of what happened. And there are some programs that can help us with our taxes. There's a senior exemption and the veterans exemption, and those are all through the assessor's office. There is a new exemption that can be applied for this year, up to March 15th, I believe, but that is also through the assessor's office.
And who's that available for?
The new one is going to be available for any senior that they had the senior exemption, and they downsized for one reason or another and moved to a new home in the county.
Okay.
So that one is for that, the new one. And the other, the veteran is if is 100% disabled veteran, can apply for the exemption. And the senior homestead exemption is have to be 65 years old and have lived in your home for 10 years.
Great. So there are some programs to help folks that might be struggling or, just need a little help on that. Why wouldn't you take advantage of that?
That's
of
right.
course?
You would reduce your taxes by that amount. There are 2 programs through the state of Colorado that has to be applied online through the state, which if anyone needed help, they can come to our office. We'll help them. We'll walk them through the process. But that pays your taxes in total, and the state will place a lien on your property, and it's at a nominal interest rate. And that lien does not have to be paid back until the property changes hands or you don't live in that home anymore.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and they pay the total amount of the taxes.
So if people are really struggling, there's a program for options.
Right.
That's great. So you do some education in your office as well as collect money and do all the other things statutorily that you're required to do.
Correct.
Good. What do you love about your job?
The people, and doing what I do for the,
Well, how does it feel to be one of the most trusted elected officials in our county? I mean, people talk about you with great respect. How does that feel?
Well, feels very good, to tell you the truth.
Well, trust is the basic.
Yes.
It is the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
and going back to if someone wanted to run for treasurer, you have to have integrity. You have to be trustworthy. You also have to be ready to put yourself out there for anything. So.
And remember, though, anybody who's interested, that's 24 hours a day. So
yes.
You may not be worrying, but you're thinking about your job and how you can do it better.
Yeah.
So let's just sort of recap before we close and talk a little bit about, again, the separation of the finance department and your department. I think we want to underscore that so people know how we typically spend money and how those are separate.
Okay. So we as the treasurer's office, we collect all the money. We have a general ledger or a set of books, and we give those reports at the end of the month to our finance department. The finance department has recorded those funds as they have been received, and their books and our books at the end of the month must agree. So finance says we have X amount of money that's allocated in all of these funds. And the treasurer says, I have X amount of cash in all of my bank accounts, and those two totals must equal. So I receive the money, finance allocates it with the direction and approval of the BOCC.
And I appreciate that finance is they're always, everybody's statutorily regulated, if you will, but that you and the finance work closely together in terms of making sure that those things coordinate and that you're doing everything by the book. So personally, and I think the taxpayers ought to think about this, is that having somebody watching over their money like you're doing, it makes me feel safe and secure. And we can always be assured that Rosemary is going to keep us in line if there's anything that we have questions about.
She will speak up.
She will speak up. Yes. She might seem quiet right now, but guess what? That is not always the case.
No.
So is there anything else that you think that we should share with our audience just to make sure that we've covered what you do and how important that job is?
Well, one thing I want to cover is when we send out our tax notices, the assessor has an insert enclosed in that. And I want to just encourage every taxpayer to really read that tax notice. It has so much information in it, has all of the new structure that's going to change with our taxes next year. And so, I want to encourage that.
So if you need any late night reading,
yes,
and I'm sure it's really interesting, but what's more important than your own money?
That's right.
Right. So we should be take note of what's going to come in the mail. When are those going out?
They'll be mailed by the end of the month.
Okay.
By the end of January.
And then the first payment, because people can pay all of their taxes or they can pay half. And what's the first?
The first
installment?
half payment is due by February 28th.
Okay.
Second half payment is due by June 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you heard it here. You know what the rules are, and Rosemary wants you to read the insert. so you can become aware of what's happening in the future. And as you know, legislature is in session. They like to change things a lot, and that's kind of where all the property taxes, the increases came from last year. So it is important to see that there's a link between your local government, between state government, and federal government, and we want you to be aware. So if you have any questions, you can visit Rosemary at her offices
Anytime.
and by September we should all be in the courthouse together. So I'm looking forward to that day, and hope this helped you understand a little bit about the complicated financial system of how things work. And I hope that Rosemary clarified things for you that we can take into the future. So don't forget to read your insert, and we'll catch you on the next County Talk podcast where we'll have a surprise guest. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Rosemary.